division by surds, also known as rationalize the denominator. So if you remember from algebra 1 and algebra 2, in general, it's not proper to have radicals that you can't simplify, or also known as surds, in your denominator. So one way to get rid of it is you multiply both top and bottom by that radical. That gets rid of it. This is actually a little funky thing because IB usually doesn't care about rationalizing the denominator. Most of your answers you can leave. If you're taking an IB exam and you get this, leave it. You're good. But for the sake of this video and this lesson, let's talk about rationalized denominator. So again, my denominator here is radical 5. So we're just going to multiply both top and bottom by rad 5. And that's okay to do because rad 5 over rad 5 is 1. You can always multiply a fraction by 1. If you simplify the top, you get 6 rad 5. And then remember, rad 5 times rad 5, they're both the same, so you just get 5. And there you go. Do the same thing here, just real quickly. So I get 35 rad 7. And again, if you bottom, you can multiply the bottom denominators and get radical 49, which is 7, or just note, if you multiply two of the exact same radicals, you cancel out the radical and just get 7. Now look at this one I added, 1 over 3 rad 5. Now remember, the rad 5 is a problem, so that's all you're going to multiply by, the rad 5. So on top I'm going to get rad 5. On the bottom I get 3. Remember, rad 5 times rad 5 is just 5, so times 5, which gets me rad 5 over 15. Now this does not reduce. Some people try to. Remember, this is in the radical, so that's like its own little world. That's stuck. Oh, that's bad. Right? This is a radical. This is not a radical. These two things do not reduce. Now it's a little bit harder when the bottom is a binomial. So when it's a binomial, you can't just multiply by the simple radical. What we have to do is multiply by the conjugate. So that's the only way to get rid of a radical. Just to show you, for example, if I have 5 over 3 minus rad 2, and you go, let me multiply by rad 2. That won't solve anything because on the bottom, it does get rid of this one, but what happens is you add a problem to this one. So you're kind of stuck in the same spot. The only way to get rid of a radical when it's a binomial like this is multiply by the conjugate, which means you just change the middle sign. So if it's an a plus rad 2, an a plus rad b, you just multiply by a minus rad b. What that does, it gets you a difference of 2 squares. And what that does, it squares both terms, so the radical goes away. So that's what we're going to do here. So you have 5 over 3 minus rad 2. We're going to multiply by the conjugate, which is just change the middle sign of the bottom term here. Whatever we do to the bottom, we're going to do to the top. Let's talk about the bottom first. Now this is a difference of 2 squares. So if you want, you can do it the long way, or if you know your difference of 2 squares, right? So it's going to be this. So you're going to get a squared minus b squared, which would be 3 squared, which is 9. Minus rad 2 squared, which is just 2. And on top, you just distribute. So I get 15 plus 5 rad 2. Right? Because again, 5 does not get multiplied by the radical 2 because it's a radical and this is not a radical, so it has to stay on the outside. Simplify this a little bit more, you get 15 plus 5 rad 2 over 7. And that's the idea.